Hey everybody, welcome to the Leek. I'm John as always, and it's time for another set review. We're on to black today. Remember, this of course is a limited set review. We're talking about my first impressions. They will evolve as the set evolves, and the intention of these set reviews is a jumping off point for conversation, so use those comments down below. But let's get started with Agonizing Remorse. Agonizing Remorse is 1 and a black for a sorcery at uncommon. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it or a card from their graveyard. Exile that card, you lose 1 life. I'm never really a fan of these effects in Limited when they say duress or when they say memory theft, and yes, I know duress doesn't hit everything, blah, blah, blah. Or even when they say Thoughtseize, they're just not that good in Limited. Limited decks have so many meh cards in them that you can whiff when you cast this because congrats, you took away a random pump spell or a bear or something. Timing it to perfectly get a bomb is almost entirely luck-based, and that's just not how I like to play Magic. Exiling from the graveyard is a very cute upside here, but still, I don't think I'm main decking this in Limited. If you have no other way of answering a bomb and no other way of answering something from a graveyard, and you can't win the game otherwise, then yeah, this can come in out of the sideboard, but don't get these confused. This card is going to be good in Standard, and maybe even see play in Pioneer, Modern, etc., who knows, but that doesn't make it good in Limited. D for Agonizing Remorse. Up next is Ephemia the Cacophony. Ephemia the Cacophony is 1 and a black for a legendary enchantment creature, Harpy at rare. It's a 2/3 flyer. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile an enchantment card from your graveyard. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. It's a 2/1 flyer in black with no downside and an upside. That's pretty crazy. Blue doesn't even usually get that. Then if you do have stuff to throw away, making bonus 2/2s is just great. It's not a bomb exactly, but I do think it's a strong B. We're not going to go into the A range for this, but strong B for Ephemia the Cacophony. Up next is Aspect of Lamprey. Aspect of Lamprey is 3 and a black for an enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature you control. When it ETBs, target opponent discards 2 cards. Enchanted creature has lifelink. Ew. No, but enough about the card art. A mind rot that gives me devotion, an enchantment, and lifelink. It's all okay. This isn't great, and in fact probably should be cut somewhat often, but I do think there is enough stuff all in this one card that it's kind of an okay C, maybe a little bit of a weakish C. Yeah, real gross looking card, but rules text wise it's okay-ish. C, weak C. Up next is Blight Breath Catoblepas. Blight Breath Catoblepas is 4 black for a creature beast at common. It's a 3/2. When Blight Breath Catoblepas enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is your devotion to black. 6 is a really tall ask for this if you're not killing something for sure. And to be sure, I feel like you want a minimum of like 4 devotion, so this gives it 2 by itself, but you do need 2 other black pips. I think people are slightly overestimating how often they'll have devotion, probably because we're coming off of a monocolored set. Remember, you're not going to be playing mono black, and you're probably not even going to be playing, 12 swamps and, 5 plains or whatever. You're going to be playing 9/8 decks again. We're going to be going back to, pretty even split of colors, which means this Catoblepas here could come down and just have nothing but red friends. You may have a board state, but you may only have 2 black devotion. But still, as long as this is, pretty definitely going to kill something, I think it is like a B-. 6 is a tall ask, and that'll be format dependent. If this format is very fast, then 6 might just be a little bit too slow for this to be, in most decks. And if it's slow enough, then, it probably stays around that B- range. I'm going to go for a little bit more of a cautious C+ on this, just because it is so conditional what it's actually going to do. And if it doesn't kill something and you paid 6 mana for a 3/2, that game's over. So C+ for Blight Breath Catoblepas. Up next is Cling to Dust. Cling to Dust is a single black mana for an instant at uncommon. Exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, you gain 3 life. Otherwise, you draw a card. Escape for 3 and a black and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. I'm not really sold on this. A single black, draw a card, I guess is okay, but I'm not of the school of thought that a card that does nothing but replace itself for 1 mana is playable. Opt is not a card that I was happy playing all the time. I did, either because I was blue-red draw a second card deck, or because I just didn't have another blue card to play. And you don't even get to play this like Opt because you don't get to play it on turn 1. or probably 2 or 3 or 4. So all in all, I'm not sold on this card. I have it at like a D. I just don't think I want to play it unless I'm siding it in because I'm against a scary graveyard recursion deck and I need to get something out of that graveyard. But main deck, not for me. D for Cling to Dust. Up next is Discordant Piper. Discordant Piper is 1 and a black for a creature zombie satyr at common. It's a 2/1. When Discordant Piper dies, create an 0/1 white goat creature token. This is fine. It's a piker. You'll play it if you need a creature. You'll cut it if you don't. And the slight upside of a normal piker is it gives you a second chump blocker. That chump blocker is not going to do too much. If you are in the red-black sacrifice deck, then this obviously goes up somewhat in value. I still don't know if I'm going to jump this up to a C+ in the red-black sack deck. But I've got this at a fine C. So a fine C for Discordant Piper. Up next is Drag to the Underworld. Drag to the Underworld is 2 black for an instant at uncommon. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is your devotion to black. What does it do? Destroy target creature. Yeah, here we go. Instant speed, 4 mana kill is awesome. We're going to be first picking that all the time, even if there was no other text. But the fact that this could be 3 or 2 mana is even better. First pick in many packs. Premium removal, just a solid A for Drag to the Underworld. Up next is Eat to Extinction. Eat to Extinction is 3 and a black for an instant at rare. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. I don't quite get the flavor here. Why you look at a card and maybe why you surveil one, I guess, because you're eating something to extinction. Anyways, flavor problems aside, this is instant speed, unconditional exile removal, and again, it's going to be the first pick in probably 100% of the packs that it's in, or I guess 99% because you could have a foil bomb in the pack, a foil bomb rare. But yeah, this is just a solid A. You're never ever not first picking this except for extraordinarily rare situations. Up next is Elspeth's Nightmare. Elspeth's Nightmare is 2 and a black for an enchantment saga at uncommon. Act 1, destroy target creature an opponent controls with power 2 or less. Act 2, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards that card. Act 3, exile target opponent's graveyard. This is okay. No one thing here is really a card that I would want to play too much. The first act is a card called Defeat, which was pretty decent in Cons of Tarkir, but that's because Morph was running around. You had a whole bunch of 2/2s, and those 2/2s were secretly 6/7s and things like that. Here, you know, there's less super duper scary 2-power creatures. They exist, and so you might get to kill something with this, but you know, I'd wager this card is actually uncastable if you don't have something to destroy right away, because you're not casting this to duress them the next turn. And then, yeah, you do get to duress, which, you know, is not a card that I ever really want to play in limited. It doesn't even hit a creature, which is pretty darn bad, because, of course, limited decks are creature heavy. And then Act 3, exile their graveyard. Cool. Maybe that screws them over. Maybe it doesn't even bother them in the slightest. You know, they're green-white. Probably don't care. So, I don't know. All in all, I have this card at like a C-, I think. You definitely just want to jam this out the second you can on turn 3 on the first 2-power creature you see, because otherwise you may not know when you can actually cast this and kill something. So, C- for Elspeth's Nightmare. I have a feeling it might actually just be even worse than that, but I'll keep an eye on it. C- for Elspeth's Nightmare. Up next is Enemy of Enlightenment. Enemy of Enlightenment is 5 and a black for an enchantment creature demon at uncommon. It's a 5/5 flyer. Enemy of Enlightenment gets -1/-1 for each card in your opponent's hands. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player discards a card. 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer is totally okay. Look around. We're usually getting a 4/4 flyer for that mana cost, and we usually have to pay double pip for it. Now, this might be smaller, but this late in the game, your opponent probably doesn't have too many cards. And this, you know, the discard every turn, or every one of your upkeeps, I suppose, will ensure that they don't. Seems like a fine enough card, assuming that you can justify a 6-drop in your deck. If you can, I think it's just a B-. Up next is Erebos Bleak-Hearted. Erebos Bleak-Hearted is 3 and a black for a legendary enchantment creature god at Mythic. It's a 5/6 indestructible. As long as your devotion to black is less than 5, Erebos isn't a creature. Whenever another creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life if you do draw a card. 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature. Target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. Erebos, like the other gods, just seems very, very good. The body is great for that cost. The static ability is awesome, being a May ability, because it won't kill you. You can choose not to pay the 2 life and not draw the card. The activated ability will make combat a nightmare, but it is very costly for 2 mana and a creature. -2/-1 won't exactly be picking creatures off left and right usually, but it will make things pretty sticky for your opponent. They're going to have to do a lot of combat math. Like the other gods, I think this is just a slam dunk A+. A+ for Erebos Bleak-Hearted. Up next is Erebos' Intervention. Erebos' Intervention is X and a black for an instant. At rare, choose 1. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. You gain X life. Or exile up to twice X target cards from graveyards. Solid, somewhat unconditional removal with some bonus life gain is great. If there's a chance that a pump spell could happen, your opponent has mana up, they're in those colors, they have cards in hand, overpay for this. You know, if you're killing a 5/5, don't pay 5x. Pay all of the X you can. Pay 7x, pay 8x, just in case of that pump spell. But you'll be playing the first mode roughly 99% of the time here. The 1% of the time where the second mode is great will be nice, but you are playing that first mode 99% of the time. Be aware you can't do this in response to escape. I know that'll be a common question at pre-releases. The cards that you're going to want to exile because your opponent's exiling them will already have been exiled by your opponent, paying the escape cost. But yeah, this just seems like solid A- removal, I think, just because you do have to put a lot of mana in this to kill a very big thing. So A- for Erebos' Intervention. Up next is Final Death. Final Death is 4 and a black for an instant at common, exile target creature. That's right, instant speed, exile removal. It costs 5 mana, that's pretty darn expensive, but that's how Theros usually rolls. If they want you to even consider putting auras on creatures, the removal needs to be a little bit overcosted. But boy, we've just looked at like 3 pieces of removal in the last few cards. I'm hesitant about jamming auras on things, especially with the unsummon that we saw yesterday. Put auras on things at your own risk. But I also have somewhat nightmarish thoughts that best of 1 arena draft is just going to be 17 auras on a creature, flip a coin, do I win or do I lose? But yeah, this is just, solid unconditional removal. It's a little bit expensive, so it's only going to be an A-, but you're still going to pick this in a lot of packs. The downside here, of course, is you probably don't want to play like 5 of these. You'll play the first one 100% of the time. You probably will play the second one 100% of the time. The third one's where you have to start to kind of look at your curve and question your life. Up next is Fruit of Theros. Fruit of Theros is a single black mana for a sorcery at common. Target player loses 2 life. Escape for 3 and a black. Exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. F. Nope. Sometimes this will kill somebody by dealing 2 or maybe even 4. But many more times this is trash. It's going to do nothing. It's not going to have mattered that you did that 2 damage at some point. The fact that this can't touch creatures, the fact that this takes a card in your deck is just awful. This is an F. It is unplayable, and you should never ever put it in your deck. Up next is Funeral Rites. Funeral Rites is 2 and a black for a sorcery at common. You draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, and you put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. It's this set's Forbidden Fruit, or Sign in Blood, or Scry the Bones, or etc., etc., etc. We've seen this effect quite a bit, and it's always, actually, you know what, not always, but frequently very good in Limited. Drawing those 2 cards is definitely worth the 2 life, and milling 2 isn't even a downside for most black decks. You're going to have stuff that you're going to get to escape, or you're going to get to recur it somehow. So this just seems like a totally fine C. It's not a high pick card. You're not jamming this in your deck and saying, ah ha ha, I got there, but you're happy with them. So a C for Funeral Rites. Up next is Gravebreaker Lamia. Gravebreaker Lamia is 4 and a black for an enchantment creature, Snake Lamia. At rare, it's a 4/4 lifelink. When Gravebreaker Lamia enters the battlefield, search your library for a card. Put it into your graveyard. Then shuffle your library. Spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast. Not exactly sure how I feel about this. It's a 5 mana 4/4 lifelink, which is fine, so we're already at like a C, probably C+. If it was less than 5 mana, we'd jump into the B- range, but just a C+ max for the base stats there. Getting to tutor something to your graveyard could be good, but of course it's obviously extremely deck dependent. Do you have good escape cards? This is going to be great. Do you not? Well, it's not really going to do much of anything. So this isn't really something that I actually want to pick highly. I want to see this in pack 2 and pack 3 when I know that I'm in the escape deck, when I already have a Titan or something going on. So yeah, I'm going to have to play this with this card to see exactly how good it is on average and in decks that aren't, just the nut escape deck. I have a feeling that this is probably an absolute floor of a C+, and in those really good escape decks, of course, this is going to jump up to a B. So C+, B, Gravebreaker, Lamia. Up next is Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Grey Merchant of Asphodel is 3 black for a creature zombie at uncommon. It's a 2/4. When it ETBs, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. Look, Gary's back. Gary was a pretty darn good card in Limited in original Theros. I honestly don't remember him being quite as good as people remember. In Limited, in Standard, of course, it was an absolute nightmare with Mono Black Devotion. But I do remember him still being pretty darn decent. One of the best things about Grey Merchant of Asphodel in original Theros was it was common, which means you could typically get 2, maybe even 3 or more. And, if each one did 4, the game was just going to be over very, very, very fast. With Grey Merchant only being uncommon this time, that means that you're typically going to get 1 and only 1. So you do need to make it count. The upside here is that if you cast this for 2 black devotion, it's still okay. A 5 mana 2/4 that does a 4-point life swing is probably fine. That's probably like a strong C, perhaps even a C+. And then, of course, if you do get any additional black devotion going into this, it's just going to go way, 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 way up in value. I think Grey Merchant's still going to be probably a B. I do have a feeling people are going to overrate this. I have a feeling people are going to grab this over removal and such, which I think is going to be wrong. People are going to try to relive Gary's glory days, and I think it's going to be a little bit worse than it was. But don't take that to be me giving this card a C or a D or something. I am giving Gary a B. Up next is Grim Physician. Grim Physician is a single black mana for a creature zombie at common. It's a 1/1 when Grim Physician dies. Target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. These little creatures are always fine. We always had Festering Goblin, I want to say is the name of it. They're always pretty darn decent in Limited as long as there are X1s floating around. And there are X1s floating around. There's a number of X1s floating around in this format. So this is probably just a totally fine C, maybe even like a C+. The fact that it attacks kind of like a 2/2, or a 2/1 rather, because your opponent blocks with a 2/2. It takes 1 damage. Grim Physician dies, and then it does -1/-1. It did 2 damage. Haha, it's not exactly damage. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, this card just seems like, I think, a C+ to me. Maybe just a strong C. See, look, there are 1/1s for 1 that I do want to play sometimes. Up next is Hateful Eidolon. Hateful Eidolon is a single black mana for enchantment creature spirit, and uncommon it's a 1/2 lifelink. Whenever an enchanted creature dies, draw a card for each aura you controlled that was attached to it. This is probably fine enough, especially if you're white-black, the color of make your opponent's creatures die from your auras. I'm often hesitant about 1/2s for 1, and this gives me that hesitance. Sure, you could load this up with auras to make a big life linker, but not only does this die to all the other removal that other creatures do, not only can this get bounced by Stern Dismissal, this is an enchantment creature, which means I can revoke existence this, or I could return to nature this as well. So I'm super hesitant about the idea of putting auras or any resources into an enchantment creature. So yeah, Hateful Eidolon, I don't know. It's going to be super deck dependent, obviously. You're going to have to be playing auras. I think you're preferably going to be playing things like Mire's Grasp that we'll talk about in a little bit, rather than, just Indomitable Will. But we'll see. I think this could range heavily from like a C- to a B-. So C-, B- for Hateful Eidolon. Up next is Inevitable End. Inevitable End is 2 and a black for an enchantment aura at uncommon. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. So here you go. Here's a black aura. You put it on your opponent's creature. That creature dies at some point. You draw a card from your Hateful Eidolon. With cards like this, Hateful Eidolon will be a B-, so make sure you have them. Now, don't get too overly optimistic about this. Your opponent is choosing what happens, so there will be a lot of situations where you jam this on their big, scary creature, and they say, okay, I'll sack this 1/1, and hit you with my big scary creature, and then next turn I'll sack this 2/2 and I'll hit you with my big scary creature, and then you're dead. So unfortunately, this is not removal when you most desperately need it all of the time. And then on the flip side, don't expect that this is going to kill a whole bunch of things, because if you do put this on their scary bomb and they can't just win the game in a few turns, they'll just sack the scary bomb, which is fine. You know, you got there. But this is a step below premium removal, I think. So this is not going to get into the A range. I think it's still great. I think it's still a high pick. I think it's a B. But one thing that people don't often do in limited Magic, you have to respect that your opponent has a brain and will make the correct choice some of the time. So just a B for Inevitable End. Up next is Lampad of Death's Vigil. Lampad of Death's Vigil is 1 and a black for an enchantment creature nymph at common. It's a 1/3, pay 1 generic mana and sacrifice a creature. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Nice little sack out for the black-red sack deck, as cheap as it is without being free, and a nice little effect is attached to it as well. It's around a B- if sacking is a key part of your plan, and it's even a C+ value card otherwise in most black decks that aren't, you know, stealing things and sacking things to give other permanents bonuses and blah blah blah. Even if you're just like black-white enchantments, this is an okay C+. So C+, B- depends on your deck, but a card that you're playing probably just all the time. Up next is Minions Return. Minions Return is 2 and a black for an enchantment aura at uncommon. It's got flash, enchant creature. When enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So these effects have never been good. I don't think these effects have ever had flash before. With flash, I think this card actually does become good, and I think the uncommon symbol there, because these cards usually are commons, maybe gives a little bit of a suggestion that this card might be good as well. It's almost like a counter spell in black of sorts. Your opponent goes to cast removal on your creature, you flash this in, and haha, my creature comes back. As well, it doesn't say enchant creature you control. So you can flash this in as an opponent's creature is about to die and steal the opponent's creature. So I actually think this card is shockingly good. I think it reads similar to cards that have been really bad in the past, but that one word of flash, I think bumps this up to a B-. Am I crazy for giving that grade? I'm not sure, but I'm going to go with a B- on Minions Return. I'm starting high on this card. Up next is Mire Triton. Mire Triton is 1 and a black for a creature zombie merfolk at uncommon. It's a 2/1 death touch. When Mire Triton enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard and you gain 2 life. A 2/1 death touch for 2, sure, totally fine. I prefer 1/1s for 1. Gain 2 life, sure. Mill 2 to help me escape stuff, sure. Everything on this card is just fine. It's going to be something that I'll play 100% of the time. I'm not going to go out of my way to pick this up. I still feel, even with everything that this does, that it could probably be a common. But yeah, I think it's a totally solid C+. Every black deck's going to be happy with this. C+ for Mire Triton. Up next is Mire's Grasp. Mire's Grasp is in the running for the best common in the set. 1 and a black for an enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -3/-3. It's removal for small to mid-sized things. It's post-combat removal for bigger things. It can shrink things until you can get around to killing them. It's totally solid. It's dead weight all growing up, and it's the possible first pick in some packs. There's obviously uncommon removal that'll take over it and bombs that'll take over it, but this card is great. It's an enchantment, so it triggers Constellation, and the black-white deck is definitely all about recurring enchantments, and boy is this an enchantment that you'd love to recur. So yeah, I think Mire's Grasp is just a solid B, maybe even B+ for Mire's Grasp. Up next is Mogus's Favor. Mogus's Favor is a single black mana for an enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/-1. Escape for 2 and a black. Exile 2 other cards from your graveyard. Nice little removal that punishes X1s and kills bigger things after combat. Just make sure that you're killing them. Otherwise, you're giving them +2 and just a little bit less toughness if they do survive it. This is a card that I'm definitely interested in escaping as well, though your opponent knows it's coming the second time, which is a little bit less impactful. Seems like a strong C+, I think. I don't think I'm going to jump into the B range for a -1 ability, but yeah, strong C+ for Mogus's Favor. Up next is Nightmare Shepherd. Nightmare Shepherd is 2 black for an enchantment creature demon at rare. It's a 4/4 flyer. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1 and it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. This seems super solid. It's a 4/4 flyer for 4 in black with an upside, which is nutty. We talked about that with the 2/1 flyer at rare with an upside. And the upside ranges from cool, my random creatures make chump blockers if they die, to awesome, my creatures with cool ETBs or activated abilities get to have that ability again when they die. The card just seems very bomby, even just on stats alone for black, and it is a May ability, which means if you are, having an escape creature die and you want that to come back later with the escape route, you can still have that be what happens. So this just seems like an easy A to me. Even on stats, it's like an easy B. So A for Nightmare Shepherd. Up next is Nyxborn Marauder. Nyxborn Marauder is 2 black for an enchantment creature Minotaur at common. It's a 4/3 with no rules text, just flavor text. It's fine. A 4/3 for 4 is a card that you'll play. It's very filler. It gives you devotion, and honestly, the black devotion cards have been the best ones we've seen so far, making Drag to the Underworld cheaper, making sure that Blight Breath Catoblepus actually kills something. But yeah, I think there's just better ways of going about that if you're trying to get devotion. I think there's better ways of triggering Constellation, and there's not even that much Constellation. I don't think we've said the word Constellation yet today. But at the end of the day, it is still a 4/3 for 4, which is a creature that, you're not excited to play, but you will. So I think all of those little tiny bonuses make this a C rather than the C- that I might have given it. And I don't even think I would have given it a C-. It's just a C, but it's no better. C for Nyxborn Marauder. Up next is Omen of the Dead. Omen of the Dead is a single black mana for an enchantment at common. Flash, when Omen of the Dead enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. 2 and a black, sacrifice Omen of the Dead, scry 2. So historically, I typically haven't liked the return a creature to your hand effect. But we do sometimes get versions that I really like. Soul Salvage, returning 2 creatures. The Ixalan one, typically returning 2 creatures for 1 mana. This one, returning a creature at instant speed for 1 mana, and I get to scry later, is going to be one of these cards that I am going to like quite a bit. I think it's a solid C+. I don't think you're going crazy with, jamming your deck full of these. I don't think you're picking it highly at all, but I do think it is a pretty solid C+. C+ for Omen of the Dead. Up next is Pharika's Libation. Pharika's Libation is 2 and a black for an instant at common. Choose 1. Target opponent sacrifices a creature, or target opponent sacrifices an enchantment. Drinks on Pharika, I guess. Instant speed edict effects are nice. I think they get underrated. They're not great, but I think they do get underrated. Your opponent gets to choose. I explain frequently that hurts a card's value. However, this isn't a removal spell that you hold on to until turn 9 or 10. You cast this on turn 3. You assume it's going to kill an early drop, and you cast it that way. A totally okay C, maybe even a C+ being instant speed as well as potentially hitting enchantments, but not any higher because your opponent does get that choice, and you should assume that this basically says destroy target, and target's not the right word there, creature with CMC 3 or less, essentially. But obviously it's less good than that card that I just described. But yeah, I think this is a totally fine C, maybe even a C+ for Pharika's Libation. You just don't want to load up on these. 1 is fine. Up next is Pharika's Spawn. Pharika's Spawn is 3 and a black for a creature Gorgon at uncommon. It's a 3/4 with escape, 5 and a black, exile 3 other cards. Prior to escaping, it's just a 3/4 for 4, but after it escapes, it does escape with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield this way, each opponent sacrifices a non-Gorgon creature. How many Gorgons are in the set? 2. This one and 1 more that we'll talk about later today. That's it. So definitely your opponent has to sacrifice a creature. It would just be powerfully unlucky if all they had was Pharika's Spawns and Venomous Hierophants. So yeah, prior to escaping, this is like a C. It's an okay include of a creature. You're not going to feel upset about it, but you're also preferably not going to play it either. When you escape this, the fact that you do get your opponent to sacrifice something is fine, but we're talking turn 6, 7, 8, 9 here that you're actually going to do that, which means your opponent's probably going to be flush with choices, and edict effects aren't that good. We just talked about that with Pharika's Libation. Now you also get a 5/6 for 6 mana, which is okay. That's a big dumb creature. There's no evasion or anything on this. So I think this is probably all told a fine card. I think it's like a C, perhaps plus, just because it's a creature that can recast itself, which is a nice little bonus. That's probably enough to push it up to C+, but I don't think it goes any higher than C+. Honestly, probably could have just been a common. Up next is Rage Scarred Berserker. Rage Scarred Berserker is 4 and a black for a creature Minotaur Berserker at common. It's a 5/4. When Rage Scarred Berserker enters the battlefield, target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So 5 mana, 5/4, meh. +1/+0 and indestructible to another creature for a turn. I guess it's a cool little bonus, but that's still not really enough for 5 mana for me. This seems really cuttable. It doesn't have trample. It doesn't do anything after the first turn that it enters, and I'm just not in the business of playing 5/4s for 5 that don't do anything. So I think this is a C-. I think it's very cuttable. You know, it has stats and power and toughness on it, so I don't think we'll go any lower than a C-, but C- for Rage Scarred Berserker. Up next is Scavenging Harpy. Scavenging Harpy is 2 and a black for a creature Harpy at common. It's a 2/1 flyer. When Scavenging Harpy enters the battlefield, exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. Another 2/1 flyer. At least this one costs 3 mana, and it has an upside in black. Totally fine aggressive flyer. It's a solid C. We're not going to go to a C+ for this, but yeah. Black's going to have some really good aggressive flying options. So C for Scavenging Harpy. Up next is Soul Reaper of Mogis. Soul Reaper of Mogis is 2 and a black for an enchantment creature Minotaur Shaman at common. It's a 2/3. Pay 2 and a black and sacrifice a creature. Draw a card. 2/3 for 3 is okay, but the sacrifice outlet part is a little tiny bit expensive. I'd rather the Lampad or, of course, Woe Reaper that we'll talk about soon, but it's still okay in the black-red sack deck, and it's an okay card to play in any black deck with creatures. Drawing a card, of course, is a pretty decent bonus here. Around a C level in all decks, I think, and I think it cracks the C+ range in that black-red sack deck, and, you know, might even push B- for the first one. It's just 3 mana is starting to get a little bit costly for the sacrifice outlet. Up next is Temple Thief. Temple Thief is 1 and a black for a creature human rogue at common. It's a 2/2. Temple Thief can't be blocked by enchanted creatures or enchantment creatures. So it's a bear that is sometimes unblockable, which is fine enough, probably around a C until you see that your opponent is heavy in the enchantment or enchanted creature deck. I'll play this if I have a spot, and I'll consider siding it in if I do see some heavy enchantment stuff on the other side of the board. That said, if my opponent is Oriing things up, am I getting there by playing an unblockable 2/2? They're putting +4/+4 on their creatures. Haha, they can't block my bear anymore as I start taking 7 damage. This is probably just a C regardless of what's going on. I don't think it's an amazing card, and I think it will be a little bit overrated to start. Up next is Treacherous Blessing. Treacherous Blessing is 2 and a black for an enchantment at rare. When Treacherous Blessing enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. Whenever you cast a spell, you lose 1 life. When Treacherous Blessing becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. So 3 mana, draw 3 cards. I love that. I have to pay a life for every spell that I cast. That's probably fine for at least a little bit, and then I just need a way of targeting this, and it doesn't even have to be with a spell. It could be with an ability. I can't think offhand if there are any abilities that would target it, but all I have to do is have a way of turning it off. This is obviously a bit risky, and you could just end up locking yourself out of the game if your life total does go too low. You need to side this out aggressively, but I think I'm going to start playing this 100% of the time. I think it's going to be underrated by people. And I'm going to start this optimistically at a B. I think this card's actually going to be pretty darn good. This might be like Midnight Oil, where everyone thinks it's bad at the start. But yeah, I would prefer to have a clearly defined escape plan from this card. Up next is Timurit Calls the Dead. Timurit Calls the Dead is 2 and a black for an enchantment saga at rare. Act 1 and Act 2. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may exile a creature or enchantment card from your graveyard. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Act 3, you gain X life and scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. Important first bit of information here. There are 2 common zombies and 2 uncommon zombies, and that is the extent of zombies in Theros Beyond Death, which honestly seems like too few zombies given the name of the set. But yeah, obviously this one also makes you 2, but you can basically assume that you are going to gain 2 life and scry 2. If you have your Discordant Pipers or your Grim Physicians still kicking around, maybe it's going to be 3 or 4. So yeah, I don't know about this card. Milling yourself for 6, exiling creature cards, which means you don't get to use those cards to escape with, to get 2 2/2s, scry 2 and gain 2 life. I don't know. This card feels deeply mediocre to me. I'm actually going to start it really low. I think it's like a D+. I think you just don't play this card. I'm just not sold on the value being there. If you are a heavy escape, like heavy duty black blue escape, then maybe this is okay. You're still going to have 4 cards left in your graveyard after you exile 2 from Act 1 and Act 2. But Yeah, I don't know. I'm giving this a D+. It just reads really, really, really mediocrely. If I'm missing something here, let me know, but D+ for Timurit Calls the Dead. Up next is Timurit Chosen from Death. Timurit Chosen from Death is black for a legendary enchantment creature demigod at uncommon. It's a 2-star. Timurit's toughness is equal to your devotion to black. Pay 1 and a black, exile up to 2 target creatures from your graveyard, not yours. You gain 1 life for each creature card exiled this way. It's a hard to cast bear with some ability to mess up your opponent's escape plans. It seems like an okay card. You know, it's probably just going to be a bear or a 2/3 or a 2/4 or a 2/5. Like Daxos, I don't really care too much about the toughness increasing. I'd rather the power to be increased. And, you know, sometimes that 1 and a black exile something is going to really hurt your opponent, or, you know, it might just gain you a few life. This isn't super powerful, but I think it's fine. I have it at like a C+. I don't think Timurit quite cracks into the B range for me. Up next is Underworld Charger. Underworld Charger is 2 and a black for a creature Nightmare Horse at common. It's a 3/3. It also can't block. Escape for 4 and a black, exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Underworld Charger escapes with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So it's a 3/3 for 3 that can't block. Choo-choo. Let's attack. And when my opponent likely trades for it, unless they've got some beef, in which case, I can bring it back as a 5/5 for 5. Choo. Freaking chew. Now all this hype I'm laying on it, you know, it's still only a C+, I think, for black aggro decks, but I do like this, and I'm going to try to punish people early in the format who are doing dirtily stuff by just playing a few of these and just slamming in. I think it's a totally fine C+ card. The stats just line up really, really well. It reminds me a little bit of Dusk Charger from Rivals of Ixalan, but of course that could block. But yeah, C+ for Underworld Charger. Up next is Underworld Dreams. Underworld Dreams is black for an enchantment at uncommon, which is a reprint from Fallen Empires. It says, whenever an opponent draws a card, Underworld Dreams deals 1 damage to that player. Triple black to deal 1 damage a turn? Nope, not interested at all. Curse of the Pierced Heart is not really playable outside of decks that are, you know, super duper aggro, and I don't know that you're really going to get there in a super heavy black deck, because of course you need to be a super heavy black deck to be playing a black card. So I just don't see this being playable. I think it's an F for limited. I don't think it's good. You know, black has good devotion payoffs, but there's better ways of doing that. This could be a 2/2 and deal, you know, a lot more damage a lot faster. So F for Underworld Dreams. Our second last card is Venomous Hierophant. Venomous Hierophant is 3 and a black for a creature Gorgon Cleric at common. It's a 3/3 Death Toucher. When Venomous Hierophant enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Big creatures don't really need Death Touch. They're big. This isn't big, it's mid-sized. This is still fine, but I do just bulk a little bit at paying 4 mana for a creature whose intended purpose is to block and kill something bigger. But the mill 3 is a nice little bonus, I guess. If you're looking to escape hard, this is definitely a creature that you want. But yeah, all in all, this just feels like a C to me. Maybe a C+ if the format's really slow. But yeah, I just don't like putting a bunch of mana into a bigger Death Toucher. Just give me Typhoid Rats, that's all I want. A 1/1 Death Toucher for 1 will do exactly the same thing that a 4 mana 3/3 Death Toucher will do. Our final card for today is Woe Strider. Woe Strider is 2 and a black for a creature horror at rare. It's a 3/2. When Woe Strider enters the battlefield, create an 0/1 white goat creature token. It brings its own lunch. Sacrifice another creature, scry 1. That's right, no cost. No tapping, no mana, no nothing. Escape 3 black, exile 4 other cards. Woe Strider escapes with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. This card seems fantastic. It's a virtual 3/3 for 3 that can lose a toughness to scry once, which is great if you're never sacking anything else. Being a free sack outlet is awesome. That means you can spend mana to steal an opponent's creature with a red card and sack it for free because you don't need any extra mana. Something being removed for chumping, sack and scry. If your opponent does kill this, it comes back even stronger when it escapes. Seems like a very solid B+ to me. I love black red escape, so I actually want to put this up to an A-, but I'm not going to. B+ for Woe Strider. So that's going to wrap it up for black. Black has some very interesting cards. It's got the best removal in the set, as it frequently does, but it seems like there's a lot of it. Between Eaten Alive and Dragged to the Underworld and Final Death and Erebos' Intervention and Myers Grasp and etc., it just seems like creatures are going to die in this format, which, like I said, makes me hesitant about all the people who are like, oh, auras, I'm going to put all the auras on all the creatures. I'll kill them in response, and 2 for 1 ya, 3 for 1 ya. But yeah, let me know what you think of Black. Are you excited for Erebos? You know, are you going to go deep on the escape plan? Is Timurit Calls the Death actually better than a D+ that I gave it? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me over on Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook. You can find me especially on twitch.tv/TheManaLeek on Wednesday around 2:30 Eastern, where I will be playing Theros for many hours, sealed on Magic Arena. Thank you very much to Wizards of the Coast for inviting me to that early access event. And of course, you can help me out at patreon.com/ManaLeek if you want to become a backer there, work your way towards getting a playmat. There are so many ManaLeek playmats out in the world nowadays. Because of all the patrons who have hit $60 lifetime, you get entered to get the cards out of the Crack Pack each week, and you get to come hang out in Discord with all of us. Of course, the easiest way to help out is to like, share, and subscribe, but if you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see y'all next time.